If your son or daughter were raising around, what would you tell them to watch out for that most CEO founders miss? Well, I'm here with Julie Maples. Julie, thank you so much for coming on the For You Leaders podcast. I am really, really excited to have you as a guest. You've got unique perspective, and I'd love for you to share just a little bit for our listeners about your background. Go back 10, 15, 20 years, however far you want to go back, and just share about your journey and what you're doing now.
Well, I always love my time with you, Kirk, so appreciate the opportunity. So yeah, I've been in seed stage venture capital for over 25 years, spent time on both sides of the fence as a founder and also then in the seed stage space. It was after selling the second of two companies that I was a co-founder in that I wound up beginning the angel investment journey, which led me to running Firefly today.
So talk to me a little bit about your involvement with the V Foundation. Talk a little bit, just maybe even go back further and just kind of what got you into that. And I want people that are listening to really kind of get to know what a soulful and wonderful person you are. So
Well, the V Foundation has been a special part of my life. I always say that V stands for venture capital, but also V Foundation. People don't really know what's going to hit them when I come at them.
uh,
But at the time of selling the second of two companies, I made a choice, which was not only to do, my life as a venture capitalist, but also to do something which had much more meaning for me. And that's when I started the V Foundation Wine Celebration. And over the last 25 years, it's raised over 170 million for cancer research. We're now the number one cancer wine auction in the United States. And the V Foundation has been a really important part of my life. So we do 100 cents out of every dollar strictly to cancer research. So we're really focused on funding the best of the best. And it's been a great journey with that team.
yeah, well, thank you for doing that. I know that I've had my own journey around cancer and have helped raise money for cancer centers and stuff like that. And it is something that we've got to get out in front of. So I know that your experience and the way you leverage kind of your talents and gifts and past, you are much more of a river than a reservoir when it comes to giving. So thank you for doing that. That's a big deal.
Really, it has come, it's really one of those situations where 1 + 1 = 5. So what I thought were dual tracks of sort of my work, my daily, my venture, and then sort of what I did in philanthropy on two sides of the fence. And that's not the case at all. And wound up becoming one big green field. And
Uh,
yeah, so both sides benefit the other, and it's really developed into a wonderful, wonderful life.
well, good. Well, thank you. Well, let's jump in here. This episode is talking about just not kind of the the hype around raising and investing and doing those things. There's a lot about that, but this is really for our listeners, as I've talked about in other episodes, is that journey to the top. And that journey sometimes, in growth, it gets messy, it gets difficult, and it's fun to talk about, the unicorn outcomes and the those kind of things. But this is really kind of getting in and digging in. And so one of the first question I have is, when someone's raising capital, maybe think of it as a family member or something like that, and you're standing on these scars and you're standing on these lessons learned, like you said, have been on both sides of the fence, whether it's their first round or it's a later stage. What are the most important things they should be thinking about up front? Whether that's, best practices or certain kinds of mindsets or just hard work, won lessons. Like what would you share with a family member or someone that's just starting that journey, or maybe that it's even late stage?
I think the most important thing is just to know and get to know the people that you're dealing with, to really make sure that you're understanding their perspective, what their values are, and that really comes down to kind of how people behave when the going gets rough. So I think it's really important for founders to do their diligence on investors. And I have a situation right now where there was a value add angel investor who's coming into a round. And in the last month and a half, he's taken so much time from the team in a way that has been really distracting and not helpful, not beneficial, doesn't provide exponential momentum for them. So But there's other cases where there's investors that come in, and if they're not really aligned with what your vision is and where you want to go with the company, it sometimes feels better on paper looking at a better valuation or terms around a financing, but it really matters who the people are and kind of getting to know them and doing your due diligence on the investors as well.
Yeah. So how do you, cause that's gets to the heart of really why I want to be having these conversations, is because I've seen that and experienced that. What are some examples or ways you've seen people either really effectively or ineffectively kind of navigate that journey around, like I said, I need this check,
Yep.
I want this capital. Supposedly this person's a value add for whatever reasons, and they kind of gloss over or fly by those details and hope that they'll take care of themselves later. Like, what have you seen people navigate that either really well or just kind of blow by it? What advice would you give?
I think it's really having the sort of self-presence and self-awareness that there is a time that you slow down before you speed up. And it is getting to know those people, getting to know the investors, whether it's an angel or a seed stage fund or a later stage fund, ask for the references, do some checks around and really understand how they've worked with companies. Or, if it is somebody you're expecting to make introductions for you, see that they've done that for other companies. A lot of times there are other investors on the cap table, and even though I'm the seed stage investor, they may be a Series C or a Series D, and we never hear from them. And it should be, there may be a likely relationship that they're opening up that door, and that's not happening. I think other things that I've seen done really well, again, is founders, a current founder who really took the time to understand what each constituent on the investor syndicate was bringing to the table. And sometimes it was not at all, but that was the expectation that was set.
Mhm.
So really understanding what each component is, and if you are going to take in angel funds, you're really understanding what each one of those tranches of capital or pockets of capital are going to be, and also know that most likely there's a high probability they won't be falling on in a later stage round. So ensuring that this seed syndicate, right, knowing that are those seed stage investors saving capital, saving powder if there's a secondary seed, because oftentimes there is. We haven't hit all the milestones. And so it's being really thoughtful about all the elements of the round.
So what are some questions that you get that tell you that, like, this person gets it? This person actually is really doing their homework. I think this is someone that I actually am going to work well with. What kind of questions tell you that?
Yeah. I think that when I hear from a founder, I spoke with somebody that, you've worked with, or they've reached out to founders. Now I'm going to give, my complete founder list, the good, the bad, the ugly, ones that
Mhm.
worked, and ones that didn't work. But if somebody has proactively done that, that really, makes me pay attention. And I'm really grateful for that, right? So, because I know that if they're doing their homework on me, they're being very thorough about how that they're constructing a seed stage round, which sets them up for success.
So I mean, you're really looking for a relationship beyond the capital. The capital is the reason to get into the relationship, but you're really wanting to make sure that they are aware of what your values are, what you're looking for, and they're, like I said, they're doing their homework. So what are you talked a little bit earlier about when the going gets rough. I mean, it does, right? That's part of the journey. It is going to happen. How have you seen founders and CEOs that have really inspired trust and built that trust? What are some ways, after the check has been written, that they go about that, even when times aren't great or things aren't going? What are some habits or things that you like to see or would encourage someone to do?
I like to see early, consistent, and transparent communication. So from the very beginning stages, after a seed stage round has closed, or if there are multiple closes, that it's sort of beginning somewhere at the appropriate time. Could be an email communication. It could be a broader kind of quarterly call. I'm talking outside of the board meetings. But I think that founders, if they can be consistent about their communications, tell everybody what's top of mind. And this might be a broader set than just the board. It may be the investor community or constituent community, and then see what the highs, the lows, and then what are the asks. So when founders are always sending an ask, um, they're putting their needs top of mind, and board members or community members are more likely to take a quick action. So it's being efficient with their communications. It's not that these are lengthy, but it's continually dripping and keeping the company top of mind and aware of, the things that are not going right.
Yeah.
I don't like to get into a board meeting and then suddenly start to see the threads of what hasn't been working. So I think if founders can really be clear and transparent about, hey, this isn't going right, and here's what I'm going to do about it, or here's what I think I should do about it, or I'm not really sure what I'm going to do about it. All three of those are okay as long as
Yeah.
it's standing behind that response and asking for other opinions or feedback, or saying, no, I've got it and this is what I'm going to do. That's good too.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It's about building those conditions that can handle the weight of the truth. Because the fact of the matter is things are going to happen in this journey that are unexpected. And part of it is having those team of people around you like yourself. You have experiences, you have a vast amount of resources that you can help with and you want to help. But I know that oftentimes, human condition is like, well, I can't go say that. I this is one I can't talk about or whatever. And that's the exact time to kind of lean in with that.
I have
Um,
a vast amount of resources of things that didn't go right.
yeah,
These are
exactly.
cool. So it's more about the experiences of what didn't go right than it is what, all happened to align and go and go in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been on this journey with so many CEOs where they had people that they thought they could do that with, and they did do that with, and it went very, very poorly. Um, any thoughts or recommendations around, how to think about that or navigate that?
Tell me, I'd love to hear the example you're thinking of.
Well, I've got lots of examples where people were open and they were transparent, and and the board kind of turned on them because the board, I mean, they're there, and correct me if you think differently. They're there obviously to help the company grow, to help the CEO and the team get the right team in place. And I mean, they've obviously got a real interest in making
Mhm,
that happen. But they've also got, at least later stage, they've got other people, LPs and other people that they're serving as well. And so
mhm,
I've just seen where sometimes the CEO will come in and be honest and build that rapport, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in the doghouse, and that causes everybody to turtle in.
mm, mm. Um,
I know you I say this sincerely. I know you don't do that, but people are listening, or I'm sure they're thinking about, like, what happens if, can I really be honest? And it goes back to what you're saying, that building that relationship in the beginning to make sure you're really.
Yeah, no, I'm being thoughtful just because we had a recent situation where a CEO was stepped down in the role and the COO took over as a CEO. But it was a situation where the company was burning so much cash going towards a brick wall. And um, I feel like she wasn't being self-aware with herself that the contracts, the $1 million contracts, the $10 million contract wasn't right around the corner.
Mhm.
And in that situation, and she wasn't willing to change her path at
Mhm.
all, the
Mhm.
company would have run out of cash in a couple months.
Yeah.
And a highly, highly skilled, exceptional team, everybody would have lost their jobs. So in that situation, it wasn't full transparency, at least to herself, about what
Yes.
the reality of the situation. Doesn't make it easy. It was super hard. It was the right decision. At a board level, we felt that. Most of this, all of the senior management felt that changes had to be made,
Mhm.
but certainly not an easy one. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
those definitely occur.
yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that example, because yeah, it is that self-awareness. We all need the help of others to look in those blind spots. And unfortunately, you've seen it, I've seen it, where some people just aren't willing to shine a light into that spot, and it causes problems in a significant way. Um, One of the things that I'm always curious about is, how do you help, founder CEOs navigate kind of the tension between valuation they want to kind of minimize dilution and do those things, and then a valuation that's actually going to set the company up for long-term success?
Mhm. Again, going back to my deep experience with getting it wrong, you know, the number of times that has happened, when the valuations get set too high, the runway is only X long, and you're really setting yourself up for a down round, which I try to, just share my experiences with that. Not only my experiences, but my experiences with other founders who, in their startups, when the later stage rounds keep extracting more and more, it hurts the founders as much as it does the seed stage investors. So I try to explain that there's a lot of alignment where I am and the founders are, and then I give them experiences, or I give them other founders that I've worked with that will share their stories of the painful down rounds. So hopefully there's some balance at the end of the day where they're achieving something they're really happy about, something that works for our ownership expectations at our firm, and something that's setting us up for success for the next round. And I think that's key to really be set up for success in the seed stage round. More
Yeah.
often than not, we're winding up doing a secondary tranche of the seed. So sometimes it's a flat valuation, sometimes it might be a slight step up in valuation, but we're deploying more capital in the seed stage round, in this decade than we had in prior. And it's really because you got to set them up to achieve those milestones to go into a successful Series A.
Yeah, that is so powerful. I see a lot of times, and you always see, when someone's raised around or something like that, everyone's congratulating them and doing these things. But, it can be the equivalent of congratulating somebody for taking a bigger mortgage on their home. Now all of a sudden you got to go make the home worth that, and hopefully you live in a neighbor, and so um I think it's really important. I know you do a good job of this, of kind of helping people navigate that, because it's, they're trying to control the dilution that happens on their cap table. But at the same time, I've seen and have been invested in things where um, the valuation got so high, the overhang was so big. For sure, Common's never going to see anything.
Right, right. That's right.
Yeah.
And as
I'll
soon
go.
as you're pushing those boundaries of maybe you achieve a step up in valuation, but then you're vulnerable to the liquidation preferences, right? And that's purely going to hit the founder or the early investors. Brett Hurt has always done an amazing job navigating and balancing, distributions over all of his partners. He's done a really good job on holding that line and getting transactions done that um, are kind of magic, if you
Yeah.
will. So it's not an easy dance. But if you start out from the beginning with a more rational valuation, you're in much better shoes than if you don't.
Yeah, yeah. Brett Hurt's a good friend of both of ours, and that's actually how I was introduced. Brett introduced me to you. Yeah, he's done, because I've been able to be kind of behind the scenes, behind the velvet rope with him on several of those things, and yeah, he is truly a master at
Mhm.
how he thinks about everybody and trying to make sure everybody's well thought of in that. With all the conversation around AI and everything, how that's changing, the positive things that's happening, how's it changing how you think about, investing in companies, and what are you looking for? What are you seeing?
We're seeing some crazy stuff. A team out of DeepMind looking to raise a $300 million round um, was one most recently. But it's common. We see it all over the place. The size of rounds that are getting raised, the recruiting from our current AI teams, unless there's a very strong culture and mission where everybody's driven to what they're doing, uh, employees are getting poached in the AI space.
Mm.
Um, we'll see where that nets out. I'm sure there's going to be some massive wins, whatever Mark Zuckerberg's doing and et cetera, right? With poaching employees or recruiting employees with these massive amounts. I just I don't understand how, like, the capital stack that's across AI, um, and the hangover that will be there when we try to get a lot of these companies out the other side. I don't understand how that will flow. Um,
Yeah.
but it feels like it will be, even in a market where, there's one or two winners in a category. in regular venture, and it's sort of the, you have two or three that are the fund returners. It feels like we've taken that scenario and even stacked on, even higher probabilities of actually of winning and having a huge successful exit. Having said that, I think some of the exits are going to be massive, a lot of value being created, but it's still the market feels so volatile, right? So it's not for me, for partners, for other discussions I've had, it's not necessarily diving into a meeting and understanding exactly what this particular AI company is doing. We're looking at a verticalized AI company, and it's about asking the right questions, right? Things are moving so fast and integrating new elements into the AI models. So it's definitely about asking the right questions.
Yeah.
I know
So
a lot.
what are some of those questions that you're asking people that are, seeking you out, that are trying to, have you become part of their team? What kind of questions are you asking, or are you listening to be answered?
Yeah, so right now I'm looking at a technology which is a quantum model, so the LQMs. This week I was in discussions learning about the LQMs and how that applies to solving problems, whether it's cryptography in the finance sector. It's actually being utilized for drug discovery. So it's an interesting there. It's a set of mathematical problems around quantum sensors, and AI, but they're solving what can be very similar problems, if you will. You can see where a cryptography key could be very similar to finding the personalized medicine cancer therapeutic in a haystack, right? They're very, very specified and very, very unique, almost like a fingerprint.
Uh,
And so learning how some of the models work, sort of, I'm constantly evolving how I feel like the future is going to wind up.
mhm.
And with LQMs, right, it's 80% of the world's problems, opportunities, will be solved by mathematics. So they'll be solved by these quantum models versus, LLMs that are painting
Yeah.
pictures and having to understand images. So just understanding like what's the right application. Well, banking, medicine, magnetic fields around new heart therapies. So just trying to understand where are the places and what are the right AIs and LLMs, and then are they fields where I feel like I can add value? So
Mhm.
with certain, do I have enough of a network within the V Foundation and all the hospital systems that I'm engaged with to really navigate and do due diligence on this company and assess if it's an investment opportunity?
Yeah, yeah. I would think I would think the things that you get to see are so incredibly interesting, and the things that you get to evaluate. Yeah, so it's fascinating. Yeah, yeah. The whole AI thing, like I said, with the portfolio companies and the CEOs that I'm working with, it's, if I'm not hearing it 100 times a day, I'm not hearing it once. And it's, there, it's obviously, it's not only helping remove friction and increasing speed, and, being a good thought partner and all the different things that we already know about it, but like, to your point, there's so much that we don't know and we're not learning. So your perspective, I really, or I appreciate, because I'm interested about how capital sources are really thinking about that. I mean, I have some CEOs that are saying to me, like, we're getting ready to raise the next round, so we've got to include AI. We got to figure out how this works. It's almost like they think that they really can't raise another round unless somehow AI is the lead message.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It's been pretty interesting. Obviously, that's they've got to go deeper than just kind
Yeah,
of, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
put
I,
wrap into that kind of
I,
stuff.
I do think from an investor perspective, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's very important to do, which is to turn around and say, um, I'll ask my question and I'll relate it to something that I'm dropping it into a real world example, right? And I'll check in and I'll look at these folks because there were 6 or 7 people from the sandbox team, and I was very keen to ask them questions, but they didn't come out pretty. It's like, am I asking the right question? And he said, "You're asking the absolutely right question, but it's more like this." And I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, yeah." So what, sometimes even just putting questions in your own words in whatever way, like I got to a next level of learning the way he fine-tuned my question.
Hmm.
So I think with a lot of the AI technologies and the applications of AI technologies, it's important for me to have that kind of sloppy conversation where we're finding the middle lane and we're getting a translator in the middle so that
Yeah.
I can really get it. And I won't shy away from doing that. However, you know,
Uh,
dumb the questions, whatever,
uh,
it's an important part.
yeah, no, I love that. I appreciate that about you is, and I think people who are listening are going to really appreciate that is, um, yeah, just don't be afraid to jump in and ask the questions, and kind of navigate this because we're all figuring this out. Obviously, some people are further in the continuum than others, but I think we're at a time and a space where people are wanting to learn and grow together and understand that they need that kind of back and forth thing. How much time do you spend sourcing deals, inside of deals, looking and considering, whether it's something that is something you want to invest in versus just with your current portfolio and going to board meetings and answering questions and doing that? Is there roughly what how much time you spending in both of those areas?
I would say right now it's a balance of about 30, 40, and then 30 doing sort of other pieces of working with LPs. And but that ratio has to go higher. So it just happens to be at this moment in time. I feel like I'm around a 30% of my time is looking at new deals, and that should be higher.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What so we're talking a lot about just kind of the process of raising capital, investing capital, and everything else like that. Let's maybe switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about lessons learned. Um, you know, portfolio companies that you work with. Talk about some of the things that they do that you think help build the relationship not only with you, but actually set them up for success. You know, independent of you as well.
Yeah, and one company has a very tight culture, and they do maybe monthly dinners.
Hmm.
It's a team out of MIT in the office. It's an AI team, AI and data science team. They're very into tinkering or cooking or, creative.
Uh,
And so once a month they have a dinner there with the whole team. And I think it's really boded well for them to build a strong culture and to continually, as you see other employees, team members like starting to lose energy, being able to pull them back on and pull them back onto the mission. And they've got leaderboards of what's happening with American Express and that parts all over the world. So I think they've done a really good job at building culture. What I do think that we've encouraged them to layer on is, take that lunch and learn or that dinner and learn together, but also throw on AI tools because they're a top AI company.
mhm.
They should be, really embedding it in their workflows to become much more individual producers within the company. So that's what I've started to see with a few teams that they have lunch and learns where people are trading trading tools that they're using. I'm in one of those groups with one of the lead producers from ESPN, who works on a lot of the content for basketball, and so some of her AI generated pieces are still now finally hitting the air, which is cool. But yeah, so different people from different walks of life, but we all are kind of keen to learn about different tools and just how people are utilizing it in their workflows.
Yeah. So when you're talking about building culture, one of the things that I think about when you talk about that is just, they're coming in and they're meeting for dinner. Is that physical? Is that virtual? Is that, because there's so much about, that hearing a lot of stuff about in office, out of office, and how people are trying to navigate that journey.
It's in office. So,
Okay.
yep, they're in Somerville in Boston.
Okay. So do you have any um portfolio companies that are completely out of office or some that are completely in, or what are you seeing in that
Hmm.
arena?
Hmm. We have one team which is completely out of office.
Mhm.
And I think for the most part, it works for the folks that are a little bit older and that have
Mhm.
kids, right? It's
Mhm.
a good balance for them. I think with some of the younger folks on the team, they tend to get a little bit um, disenfranchised isn't the right word, but just a distance, and they seem to really miss that kind of face-to-face interaction where they feel like they know more exactly what they're going to go do and feel more empowered to get their job done in the best way that they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting trying to build culture in this environment, because part of it is just, obviously we can have this kind of an interaction and it's obviously very efficient, very convenient, but there's something, like you said, just about sitting down to dinner together or getting in a room and, solving a problem together, stuff that creates those serendipitous moments. And so, navigating that. And so that's kind of at the heart of my question is, really understanding what you're seeing in regards to that. What are some other things that CEOs do that build trust with you and with other investors?
I would say that when a large customer is, um, we're starting to see some sort of slippage, um, it builds a lot of credibility in our eyes that the CEO very quickly makes a decision and gets out there with the right team members. We had one company, which was a public company, had signed $10 million contract. And, the board meeting was barely over when she already had a ticket and was headed out with bringing three other team members along. And so then very next morning, the CEO, his chief financial officer were all in a room with them
Mhm.
and just addressing it head on. I think that the faster you can act, the more direct you can act, to address challenges. You're just being transparent, but you're going right out there. If you let time lapse,
Mhm.
um, I think the champion, whether it's the CRO or the CEO, they sort of lose any credibility with the people that they're trying to make champions of it as well. So I think speed and getting out there is really important. I think um, having honest assessments about the capabilities of their team members individually.
Mhm.
Often in some of the cultures where it's very, very tight culture, and this one, it's a lot of people out of MIT, you know,
Mhm.
are you keeping on people longer than you should be? They're not necessarily in the right role, but you don't want to let them go. And, that's a piece that can really hinder a burn, but it's also not good for the employee when they're an AI genius and there's a great role for them at another company where they're going to thrive. So I think there is a part of not, keeping people on, retaining people that might have better opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, we just released episode 3 of the For You Leaders podcast, where it was talking about what I call these warning signs of success, and 3 of them were around right idea, wrong person, and just kind of the emotional toll that is taken as a leader. Sometimes the hardest part of scaling is not the strategy and not even raising capital. It's those hard people decisions. Somebody that has been a good friend, that has been loyal, that has provided real value, that maybe has slipped in their performance. And what do you do, and how do you get them back, or like I said, or do you release them to go have a better opportunity? That's the really difficult stuff. Another one was around professionalizing mediocrity, promoting people, because of what they've done, not because they're ready for those leadership things and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, no, I appreciate you calling that out. That is a real difficulty that I end up spending a lot of time, helping people. And you can't just come in and say, hey, this person's got to go. You need to trust me on that. That people don't really learn from that. And so how do you help them experience it, create a real experiential type of, like putting them on a flight simulator and helping them make those tough decisions. I know that you have a lot of those kind of conversations along the way, because you've seen the results of not doing it. It doesn't get better over time,
Right. Yeah.
unfortunately. So, What's one thing that you think that CEOs and founders expect from their investors or from their board members that probably isn't fair or doesn't really play out the way that they have expectations around that what should happen?
I find that oftentimes hopping into the next board meeting, there is a um, assumption that we're completely up to speed, or random numbers that, not random numbers, but numbers that might represent certain aspects of the business. I'm not talking about the KPI sheet you
Yeah.
see month over month. Um, but I think, it's hard when you have over 40, 50 portfolio companies, obviously all at different stages of where they're active, but it's still a lot. You have to orient yourself. I'm in this board meeting, this is where we were last time. There's been a contract or two that's kind of slid. So there's so many pieces. I think that it's really helpful when founders ground you on here's our last board meeting, here's the three things that happened over the last, couple months or last month, and here's where we think we are. And then when we come out of that meeting, we have 3 or 4 bullet points of, okay, we're all on board, we're all in agreement that this is actually where we are.
Mhm.
But sometimes founders will start way in the middle of that and not reference what happened before. And a lot of times I've reread the prior board meetings materials, but a lot of times I haven't.
Mhm.
And, if I get a board pack, I'll peruse through it, but do I go back and have what the frame of reference was? And so that keeping that relevance is from board meeting to board meeting is really important. And if those numbers aren't in there or we don't cover them in some way, I may have remember them like, bam, yep, we covered those, but it's helpful to have that relevance.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you calling that out. It's fun to have this conversation because I'm usually on the other side with the CEOs here, and that's why I tell them. I was like, because they'll say like, man, I don't think they read the materials, or I don't think, and I'm like, you've got to do what you said. You've got to kind of ground them. You've got to understand that they're there to help, but you've got to help them leverage their time. You got to help, almost increase their capacity because they want to help, but that ability like to create that grounding of what has happened. Here's kind of where we're at, checking in and doing that versus like, well, I've sent 20 emails and it was buried, 18 pages deep in the packet or the
Yeah.
the thing I sent or something like that. I mean, I see some of these decks and they're 72, you know, slides long, and I'm like, you got to understand that they've also got other obligations, and so you've got to kind of said bring it, and then you also need to know each investor. Some people maybe spend the time doing that's fine, but you can't assume everybody's doing that. So I really appreciate it. Anybody that's listening, really needs to rewind and listen to what you said earlier here about, help get grounded. Here's where we were at from the last board meeting. Here's where we're going forward and stuff like that, because that allows you to create momentum and help them. And that's a lot of times I think one of the things I see where the people are missing it is they assume like you guys are there to be the CEO almost. There's like this compression that happens. Like they want the board to really kind of be the CEO, even though they don't. But that's kind of, if you look at their actions, that's what they're doing. And then, and there's this compression that happens in the business versus saying, as a CEO, I'm here to educate my board. I'm here to help keep them up to date. I'm here to help build relationships, here to help make sure that they understand the truth of what's really happening here, and spend time outside the board meeting.
Yeah.
Really, the board meeting is just a chance to, it's, there's legal obligation to doing it, but it's not show and tell.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
is that kind of fit with what your experience has been and kind of what makes an effective founder figure out the best way to utilize your skills and talents?
Definitely. And I think it goes both ways that they can take all the content that they want, but drop it in Claude, right? And say, produce the 3 to 5 areas where the board members, can help the most and where they should learn the most. Like what are they, like, have it spit that out for you. And if some of it's right, that's great. If there's a few areas that need fine tuning, but I think using some of the tools really can help crisp up meetings so
Mhm.
that on every side we're doing the best that we can, to be
Mhm.
prepared in the most efficient fashion.
Yeah. So in the spirit of kind of what you were talking about earlier about, asking questions and kind of, being messy, I want to ask you the question of like, what questions should I have been asking that I haven't asked you? You've been, uh, very polite in answering the question I've asked, but I'm sure there's some things that you're probably wondering, like, isn't he going to ask me this? What should I be talking about now?
I'm actually really keen to hear, as a leadership coach to CEOs, what is the maybe top three sets of issues that you're seeing these days, or are they not really in strict cohorts? And how do you coach VCs on the founders that we're working with? So I'm kind of flipping the question back to you.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. You said, seeing these days, they're really the issues that I see are kind of timeless. It seems, and they're going back to what we were talking earlier. A lot of things come back to people issues, where people are either promoting people before they're ready for that role. There's not clarity on what that role is, and or they're holding on to people longer than they should, and it's not just slowing down execution and momentum, it's actually deteriorating trust, because everyone else is wondering like, why are we having a look the other way deal for this person? And it really does start to, it's kind of this silent killer that I see in strategy sessions and product, roadmaps and everything else like that, where everyone's kind of dancing around the issue of we may have a wrong person or somebody that's not performing. So that's one I'm spending a lot of time around. And that also starts once again inside of cultural deterioration. Even when they're having the team meetings and they're doing those things, they aren't really able to get to the heart of the truth, which is interesting because we've been using AI a little bit inside some of those things to kind of set the friction aside, and they can experience the friction but not make it personal, because when you ask AI something, it's not defensive, it assumes positive intent. So we've used that. So that's kind of one area. The other one is just around execution. I'm seeing where, they've got a decent thesis, the right to win. Like, why do they, I'm not talking about mission, vision, values, but they've truly got like, here's why we're going to differentiate ourselves and really be able to win. And that creates, and, being around sports and everything, you notice that creates a culture in itself of just wanting to win, not here's how I can look the best, or, it's all about my performance. It's about coming together to win. So they got that thesis, but I see where the execution, they're driving more confusion into the business than clarity,
Mm,
and how they're communicating, not just communicating the strategy, but how they're actually deploying it on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. So that's the one. And the last part of your question around with the VCs and private equity folks that I'm working with, I have a really good relationship with them because the CEOs and the executives I work with know that I'm there to serve the business. I'm not there to, be, this coach for one person or two people. I'm there for the board. I'm there for the CEO. I'm there for the company. And so a lot of the coaching, a lot of times will be just helping interpret things of saying like, hey, this is what's going on for them. This is the weight that they're kind of carrying. I don't do that behind anybody's back, or it's all out in the open. Everyone knows, that there's no back channel going on that's unhealthy. But a lot of times it's the coaching of saying like, hey, here's how you can help them be more productive, and it's a two-way conversation. So it's holistic coaching, in that regard. And it's a little bit different, but sometimes it is saying, hey, the CEO's got a friend here. They know they've got a friend. I've told them they've got a friend. It's time for them to go, but you can hit it from a different angle. They trust you or whatever, and really build those highways and byways to increase clarity and communication.
mm, mm,
Does
mm.
that make sense? Does that answer
Yeah,
your
for
question?
sure.
Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's kind of a high level answer, but that's in essence what I'm doing. So
What are the types of companies that do you have a lot of AI CEOs that you're working with?
I'd say yes. I mean, it's not AI native in the sense that that's where the business started, but that's where they're navigating it. And I'm getting to see some really cool, creative ways in which people are thinking about taking their product or service, that kind of that thesis that I'm talking about that adds value, and applying AI. I'm also seeing, inside of organizations where it's interesting in the what I would think would be the more technical part of the business engineering product development, where they're the ones that are sometimes the most resistant to it, which I've haven't completely cracked the code on why that is, but I'm seeing where companies are creating like AI Olympics, where they're creating like, hey, every other week people are gonna bring in how this is creating a business solution, and they have a fun panel. Maybe they'll have a board member or a customer or something, and they vote on it, and it's both personal and professional. Like, hey, here's how I'm using it, and it's starting to create almost like this crowdsourcing and excitement, and then they track the winners over the course of the year, and the winner gets a trip to Hawaii with their family and things like that. In fact, they just left yesterday. The winners did. So for that trip,
Fantastic.
inside of offsites, I'm seeing where, they're using the AI, like I said, to kind of help break through when there's, maybe there's competing priorities or there's tension across teams, those kind of things. But yeah, I can't think of any of my companies that aren't deploying AI in a meaningful way.
Mm. I like that, the AI Olympics.
Yeah, it's really been fun. And like I said, because they had some people that were kind of resistant. I had another company where the CEO sent out kind of a Jerry Maguire kind of memo, like, hey, everybody needs to start doing this, or else, not threatening people's jobs, but like, you're going to get left behind, not because you're here, anywhere you go,
Mhm.
and I want to offer this opportunity. And it was mildly well received. Some people misinterpreted it as like a threat, so that was a coaching opportunity to kind of maybe, what we were communicating was good, but how we did it was maybe missed a little bit. But yeah. So
Um, can I ask more Kirk
yes.
questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, how many more clients are you taking on these days?
So I'll work with, and I think, anywhere from about 7 to 10, maybe 11 companies at any given time. My whole thing is I want to get in, I want to be able to help them, and I want to work myself out of a business relationship and into a friendship, which means, you know, it, I want to work myself out of the working relationship where they're not so dependent upon me. I want to build those muscles and behaviors inside the business. And so in those 7 to 11 companies, somewhere in the beginning, somewhere in the middle, and somewhere at the end of that journey. And so I'm always, having space for, 1, 2, 3 companies that are kind of on their way out. And I'm looking for 2 or 3 new ones.
What about me? I'm I-
What,
I'm not a company. Yeah,
yeah.
we're Firefly.
Yeah.
So we're just two partners, but I'm curious if you have other people you would refer folks to me, like, or what would it look like if you, I don't know, just
For,
ask.
for me, for me to work with like you, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
oh yeah, yeah, no, no. Yeah, that's what I don't have a size or number or any of those kind of things. And I've worked with one person companies, honestly, before. It's kind of like what you were saying at the beginning of this. It's like, who are they? Can I add value? And what is it that they're trying to have? What are they trying to bring about in their business? And can I actually help? And so just make sure that there's a good relationship. And that's served me so well for the last 30 years. I can't even tell you, like that's how I meet the Bret Hurts of the world, and, and the Doug Songs and all the other folks that I've been lucky enough to work with.
Cool. Well, what would I do? What would next steps be for me to maybe make some notes and shoot them your way, and then you could ask a round of questions or.
Yeah. 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 And just kind of, it would be more about, you know, I always like to start with the end in mind. What is it that we're trying to bring about? And a lot of times I'll ask people, have you had coaching before? And a lot of times the answer is no. The reason I ask that question is, coaching is an unregulated industry. People have different perceptions of what it is or what it's not or what they need. And I want to get to the heart of that, because at the end of the day, that's the expectation. And so I want to understand, like, what is it that you're hoping? I'll ask the question, let's say it's 6 months, 9 months from now, and coaching has been wildly successful. What would be new or different or changed? And that kind of helps generate a deeper conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make some notes and shoot them your way.
I
That
love
sounds
that. Yeah. I
okay.
mean,
Cool.
yeah. Well, and Julie, I really appreciate you doing this podcast with me. I can't tell you how much your insight, just your demeanor, and experience, I'm sure the people that are listening are like, oh, I wish you would have asked this, or I'd like to go deeper on this. How, if somebody wants to learn more about you, or there's somebody that would be a good fit for your particular skills, how would they go about finding you or connecting with you?
Yeah, my email, which is Julie@Firefly, FYRFLY.VC. And as I said before, that V can be something for venture capital, or if cancer research happens to be, something of interest, feel free to reach out, to me on that topic as well.
Yeah. Well, like I said it earlier, you are one of the few people that I hold out as what I call is that for you leader, that people that truly does care more about what they can put into other people than what they can get out of other people. That's that river versus reservoir. And I'm grateful that our friend Brett introduced me to you.
Me
I'm
too.
I feel lucky to call you a friend. So thank
Me
you.
too. Me too, Kirk. It goes both ways.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the For You Leaders podcast with Kirk Dando. If this episode helped you think more clearly or act more decisively, that's good. But the journey doesn't stop there. Subscribe for more content on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or go to Kirk's website at kirkdando.com to inquire about coaching opportunities. Now think of a friend, family member, or business leader in your life. How could you help normalize their journey today? Share this podcast with them. We hope that this sparks meaningful conversations in your life and that it enables you to become the leader that you aspire to be.